together. We were kind of back together yesterday for the first time in literally a month, and now we're all together in person. Petey's like,
well, no, it's just,
hey.
so Craig leaves for 3 weeks, and we have to go in the other studio. Craig's literally back today, and we got to go back to the good studio again.
We could have been here this whole time, but it's just
coincidence.
I like it in there for
I don't
two
think it's a
people.
coincidence.
No, I don't think it's a coincidence either.
Bougie Craig is back.
Craig is back.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to the PHNX Coyotes podcast. Don't forget to hit that like button. Oh my gosh. Subscribe. Nobody else can see this except for us.
Happening here?
Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Wherever you get your podcasts.
That's random.
Sean is killing me. Somebody leave us a 5-star review. I can't. We are live.
Eventually,
All right.
we're back on track here. What are we looking at here?
I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, somebody else needs to talk because I can't. I'm Leah here with Petey and Craig and Sean, who you can hear crying, laughing behind the back. I'll take a picture right now and tweet it so everyone knows what I'm looking at because this is insane. Okay, anyway, let's just get into it.
I don't understand what happened.
I don't.
They don't see that on YouTube, do they?
No, they don't.
Oh, okay.
That is why this is horrible audio and horrible
but
video.
something funny apparently happened. Some tech issue.
Yeah, and when Sean laughs, I can't help but lose my shit. Okay, well, we're going to talk a lot today about the draft. It's just over a week away. We can't wait. Craig had an article this morning on gophnx.com talking to the scouts about what the Coyotes can accomplish, and that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But before we dive into all of that, there actually was some Coyotes news this morning, and it's that the Coyotes have waived Zach Kassian and ALLCITY. You're in our thoughts. And Patrick Nemeth on waivers for buyout purposes.
Yeah, it's unconditional waivers, which is always for purposes of a buyout.
Yes.
Or release. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So yeah, I mean, a little bit of news this morning. Not a huge cap hit per se, but still clearing a little bit of money. So twofold. One, was this a surprise to you about either of these players? And two, why are they doing this?
No, not a surprise. Two, I mean, Zach Kassian, let's be honest, didn't add anything to the team last season. Really sorry, ALLCITY. really sorry to say that. Didn't add anything to the team last season. And I think there might have been some culture issues there too. So that one is not a surprise to me at all. Patrick Nemeth was okay as a depth or extra defenseman, but not at that price. I think when they brought both of these guys in, the hope was as they did with so many other players, they'd be able to flip them for draft assets at some point, and it didn't work out for either one of those guys. Doesn't make sense to hang on to Patrick Nemeth at that price, so they're clearing a little cap space with the hope of getting younger and taking that step forward that Bill Armstrong has talked about. He talked about it on our show. They're going to try... They're not going to go crazy in free agency, obviously. The Coyotes aren't going to look to add any big-name free agents. There really aren't any. It's a really weak free agent class anyway. But they'll look for value, and they'll look for ways to take another step forward, and this is part of that process.
And also, too, Craig, don't you think that they're going to do what they've tried to do all along under Bill Armstrong, is find somebody that they can flip over, like they did with Bukestad? That they find that guy that doesn't have a whole lot of options, that they can get at a reasonable price, that is just on the cusp of still being an NHLer that they can possibly flip. And if they don't flip, still add something to their locker room.
I do think that's the kind of player. It's not going to be I don't think they'll take on the bad contracts for draft assets anymore, unless somebody makes them an unbelievable offer, of course. But yeah, I think it'll be more along the lines of those guys, the Nick Bukestads, the Troy Stetchers. So you can maybe get something for them at the deadline, but they do help your group along in its maturation process, and also provide your top players continued opportunity to play big minutes.
I just think the most noteworthy part of this is just the timing, like right before the draft, right before free agency. It's, moving cap money. And so it just, it intrigues in the sense, and again, not that they're going out and doing anything crazy, but they still have to put together a roster. And this just...
a lot of roster spots available.
This is starting to move the pieces.
What day is this today? Wednesday? Tuesday. So the draft's a week
Tuesday,
away.
Petey.
A week from tomorrow.
8 days,
yeah.
right? 8 days away. Are we going to start to anticipate now that this move has happened? Are we going to see more, not just with Bill Armstrong and the Coyotes, but league-wide of moving some assets now before the draft that you don't feel are going to be able to be a part of your team going forward.
Yeah,
It'll be
gives you
interesting to see. It's
flexibility,
going to be a
right?
very busy week. Glad you made it home for this.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into your vacation schedule.
Oy, oy, oy. Well, let's get into talking a little bit about the draft. It's probably the majority of what we're going to talk about here for the next week, but that's because it's the most relevant thing. And not only that, because this is a big draft for the Coyotes. They have 12 picks at the 2023 draft, which we've already talked about. Actually, we have an overview of all of the picks that they have. 2 in the first round, 1 in the second, 4 in the third.
Look at that grin on Bill Armstrong's face, by the way.
1 in the fourth, 2 in the fifth,
villain, doesn't he?
2 in the sixth, and then obviously none in the seventh as of right now. Obviously, all of this can change, but 12 draft picks in 1 year is crazy. When we had Tim Bernhardt on the show, former Coyotes director of amateur scouting, last week, we asked him, like, have you ever drafted that many? And I guess he mentioned when there used to be, what was it, 11 rounds, 9 rounds?
9 rounds.
9 rounds that, like, there was times where you'd kind of get close to this, but because there were extra rounds, but for this to be condensed into 6 rounds is just remarkable. So there is a lot on their plate, and I guess the biggest overarching question is, what can the Coyotes accomplish with this?
Yeah, and I think it's no secret. Everyone thinks this is a forward-heavy draft. I included the Central Scouting final rankings in my story today. The 17 top North American skaters are all forwards. Not a single defenseman in the top 17 in the rankings. And then top 10 in European skaters, 7 of them are forwards. So that tells you just how skewed this is toward forwards. So as I wrote today, it would not be a surprise to me at all if the Coyotes went forward at 6 and 12. Something that Darryl Plandowski said, the director of amateur scouting, next season, the next draft is supposed to be much better in terms of defensive talent. There are a number of guys that could be top pair guys or top 4 guys. This year's draft, like not even the top defenseman, David Reinbacher, we're not certain he's a top pair defenseman. He might be a top 4 guy. So again, it's a philosophy of taking the best player available. And if Reinbacher happens to be gone at 12 when they get 12 and they don't want to reach for him at 6, I could totally see them taking 2 forwards in this draft.
That's interesting because when we have talked and we looked through their cupboards and we see that being an area of concern moving forward, that we thought when Leah and I talked that 12 might be a defenseman, but if it's not the right defenseman, you can't pick him. You got to take the best player available. And there's so many caveats to what's going to happen in this draft. There's so many question marks on comparables, or there's some interesting stories high in the draft on one particular gentleman. And so I think there's a lot of things that still need to shake out. I think it's going to be interesting. I think 1 and 2 are done. I think. Yeah. 1 and 2 are done. But from 3 until 12, until the Coyotes get their second pick, there are so many things that could happen. Somebody might jump up and grab Reinbacher. They might in that top 12. Somebody might grab Michkov at 3, at 6, at 10. I don't know. And I think Michkov is the wild card that changes this entire draft.
Yeah,
for me.
I agree.
That pushes people, and that for the Coyotes, that could be good because it could push somebody that you didn't expect to be there right into the lap at 6.
I don't want to give like too much away because I'm going to be writing stories throughout the week, and one of those is diving into adding to the defensive depth in this organization. But Darryl said something interesting to me yesterday. Like when you look at players now, defensemen are almost on the same evaluation level as goaltenders. The curve takes so long, you almost don't know what you have with them for a very long time, and part of that is the trends in the game. Everything is offensive. You need your guy to play offensive. A lot of those guys that are playing in those roles at the lower levels can't play in that role in the NHL, so they have to learn to play defense. Yeah. So it's really hard to evaluate a lot of these guys and know what you have. That's really interesting to me. Again, I don't know how these guys do it anyway when you're drafting 17 and 18-year-old kids, but when you add in variables like that, goaltenders, of course, have, like a lot of these draft-eligible goaltenders in their draft-eligible year, they're serving as a backup in junior, so how do you even see them play in games? There's so many variables that scouts have to deal with when assessing talent. It blows me away that there's any success at all in this business.
Yeah, and it's funny, though, when you hear a draft like this and you hear it's a generational draft and it's forward heavy, and like any other draft I'm looking forward to already, I'm looking forward to looking back. and going, was it really that? Was it really what we thought it was then? Because the biggest problem with the NHL draft is exactly what you just said, is there's 17. And that's a huge problem. Like when you're talking about the NFL draft or the NBA draft, these guys are playing now. Like they're men.
Yeah.
And these kids are kids, and their development process is much different. And we can talk about Bedard and Fantilli, and I think even in that first 10, you go, okay, most of the guys are going to get a good look in the NHL. But beyond that, it's really similar to throwing darts at a board. You have no idea how these kids are going to progress. And that's why the point we talked about moving that age a little bit older might make this an easier process, but it's never going to happen.
I'd love to see it happen, but I don't see it happening either. And you talk about the tiers of the draft. Everybody thinks, oh, you got a first round pick. Like, first of all, we keep adding teams so that those picks keep moving back at the back end of the first round. But if you look at the success rate of guys, even in the back end of the first round, like you said, it's a freaking crapshoot. So many of those guys just don't pan out at all.
The best player, not of this draft, because obviously Bedard, but like, who knows what they can find with one of those 4 third-round picks? Yeah. Like, speaking of throwing darts at a board, if you throw all 4 and hit 1, like, that's a huge win. And we looked back at, some of the best Coyotes late-round picks, just some iconic, later-round picks for any NHL team. And who knows what kind of player you can get in those rounds, especially, when you're looking at defensemen. Maybe you're not finding your top, power play guy, like lead top pair defenseman, but you still need depth on your defensive end. And, with the Coyotes getting rid of a defenseman today, and you're to look at the roster
and
and
losing
you're thinking
Lilleberg too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Emil Martin Lilleberg's no longer in your prospect pool.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people that still think he's going to be a good player, but the health issue is a wild card. So you've got Artem Duda, you've got JJ Mosher's already with the club.
Valimaki.
Yeah, Yusuf Valimaki was a nice pickup. They just signed Zuber. I'm forgetting someone, but you've got a bunch of guys who you think could be good NHL defensemen. Do you have a top pair guy? Probably not anywhere in there unless somebody takes a quantum leap forward, which could happen, I guess, with the development curve of defensemen. But
the other thing, though, Craig,
again, you don't want to reach.
And I hope I'm not getting ahead of where we're at here, but we talked about those guys and their maturation. Zuber, we've talked to Craig Button, said he might be ready sooner than later. But we're talking about
the other guy.
Players about.
Yes. Yeah.
But what about players like Dyson Mayo and Cam Dineen that were that bubble guy that helped carry you through? That you go, okay, we got guys in the American League that can play now. They can be effective leaders in the American League, but they can also pull us through in the National League if someone gets hurt, or they're extra buffer guys. They're gone. Like I'm concerned now that there's this tier of 19, 20-year-olds that aren't quite ready, and then you go to the guys that are already on the Coyotes. The in-between guys are the guys at defense that they're missing right now. The guys that are going to carry them through until, Duda's ready and Lamoureux's ready. It'll be interesting to see if we see that in the draft, we try to fill that up, or if we try to look for American League contracts to fill those veteran guys up. That's the biggest fear I have, is the defensive depth from the National League to waiting for these guys to develop.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment too about the goaltender and defenseman comparison. And
right, to get to that extreme. Like you mentioned in the third round, and I was thinking with 4 third-round picks, I could see them spending one of those on one of the top goalies. Like Chris Peters was telling me, there are like 6 goalies in this draft that are in the top 100, which is a good year for goaltenders. Yes. So they might spend one of them. But I could also see them moving a couple of those third-round picks, maybe to try to get back up into the second round.
Yeah, and that's what Nicholas said in the chat as well. So
that's a lot of picks.
It is
so much going on.
I mean, you're talking about 7 picks in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, it allows you flexibility.
Especially for a roster that still needs some players. Like you still need to throw out 22 guys. That's a lot of picks, and that puts a lot of pressure on your development staff and your scouting staff, and go, okay, I'm still not convinced that they're going to make all these picks. That's a lot of picks.
Yeah, and I want to talk about what I guess the perspective of the scouting staff is on all these picks, but we can get there in a minute. But actually, it's funny because just this morning, so we're very excited for our All-City mock draft next week. And now that we've been assigned our teams, there's already been chatter about making trades. Like Rudo is shopping the
I know.
Anaheim second overall pick right now. I mean, it's getting crazy in the ALLCITY draft conversation. But Sean and I were talking because as the San Jose Sharks at 4, I have a very difficult choice to make. And there's a lot about Matvei Michkov, which we'll also talk about here in a second. But you can actually bet right now on BetMGM who the second overall pick's going to be. You can bet who the third overall pick's going to be. Like, you can bet on the NHL draft if you want. And I think that's really, really cool. So some good value there if you're interested in taking a flyer, especially if you use your free bet on one of those as well.
Make sure you place your bets before you head to Nashville, by the
Yes.
way.
Oh,
Make sure you place them
yes.
in state before you leave.
Yes. Good point. But anyway, it's just really interesting to look at that. And see what the odds are. And I remember last year looking at it and we saw Shane Wright, completely fall. So I've been saying it again and again. I think this draft is going to be shocking in a lot of ways. We're going to have some of those wow moments in the top 10, whether it be teams moving, players dropping, players rising, etc. So right now, if you sign up for BetMGM, make sure you use the bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live, but for our Arizona audience, you'll get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you use the bonus code PHNX. You can check out the show notes for full details. And now you can listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
Can you imagine if the number 2 pick were actually in play? If they were actually shopping that? Like, if you're the Coyotes, would you give up 6 and 12 to get 2? I would.
Yes.
Yes.
Adam Fantilli?
Yes.
Done. Rudo, you're crazy. You better extract a huge price for that.
Speaking of crazy, do you know what you know how you have, like, you name an era or a time of season? Do you know what this summer is called? Do you know what this summer has been labeled?
Oh, I think I do.
It is smooth sack summer.
Yep.
When you're
Thought so.
when you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from your pubes to your bum. And by the way, don't forget your bum. Craig, when you sit down in your lazy boy, does it look like you sat on a poodle? Clean that shit up. When you
miss this, Craig?
when you look at the bottom of the bathtub, does it look like Radko Gudas after shaving his playoff beard?
Oh, my God.
Clean up with the Manscaped 4.0. By the way, the 4.0, you can do it in the dark. By the way, if you haven't shaved your nuts in the dark, you should absolutely give it a whirl.
Experience it just
It's
one time.
waterproof, it's cordless, and it has a light on it, the Manscaped. The Lawnmower 4.0. Give it a try at Manscaped. That's right. This summer, keep your balls cool while still looking hot at Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming are making sure we have a ball this summer. See what they did there? A ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code PHNX at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code PHNX. Manscaped. God, can't even say that. Manscaped.com. See how rattled I am talking about balls and shaving? I should have planned better, and I should have written this out.
Like off to the side,
Yeah, but if you don't know what that's like when you use, and I do use the Lawnmower 4.0, and you get done and you look
No
at the
more
floor and go,
information, please.
God, now what do I do? Now I need to get out. Like, I almost got out the blower. I used to blow off the yard to blow all the pubes away because my bathroom floor looks like I just carpeted it.
We haven't
it's a
had
tiled floor.
We haven't had a show this week that hasn't mentioned the bathroom.
And it's a tiled floor, and it looks like I have shag
Oh
carpeting.
my gosh. Okay.
It's smooth sack summer, boys. And as we always talk about with
Boys.
manscaped.com, no nicks, no cuts, no fuzzy nuts.
Chad said Steve just sent the whole show down.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, Craig, did you?
Let's talk draft.
You must have missed this, huh?
Yeah. I don't have a segue out of that.
let's
That's
talk.
your job.
All right.
But in Europe, it's different though. They have the hairy armpits and all that. I don't get it. Do they manscape?
I don't know.
I did ask.
It's okay if we don't ever know.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on. And I want to ask more about the scouting. And you got to speak to some of the scouts yesterday. But is there a different approach to this given they have 12 pick? Like, what do they go into this thinking? Like, are they hoping to draft all 12 picks? Are they, just knowing that they're probably going to maybe package some to move around? Like, what's the approach of the scouting staff?
I think they'd be okay if they made all 12 picks, but I think really what it creates, again, is flexibility, whether it's for Bill Armstrong to package assets to get something else, or if the scouts say, hey, there's a guy that we really like that has fallen this far. If we package a couple of these picks, we might be able to move up and get him now. That's what it affords you. It also affords you the opportunity to take a chance on some guys. When you have these extra picks, I like some things about this guy. We think he has a very high ceiling, but there are some concerns. We can take a risk on him because we have multiple picks in this round. So that's the sort of flexibility that I think having this many picks gives a team.
Yeah, but you look at we had Tim Bernhardt on last week, and Tim said in a busy year for him, and that's back when they had 9 rounds, if they got to pick 8 or 9, he said that would be a huge draft because you usually have traded some away. For them to have 12 draft picks right now in a 7-round draft it's amazing.
And no 7th-round picks.
No, and you've also been there, Craig, when this team has had 4 or 5 picks in the entire draft. And you've been there at times when they didn't have a pick till the 3rd round. And so for this glut of picks, gives them so many options. And the scouts are having a parade. Like, this is their Super Bowl. This is unbelievable to have this, because they get to work. Like, you get to go, okay, instead of we got to pick in the 3rd round, or you got to pick at 28 or 29, you have picks at so many different categories that you have to range and have so many different groupings of players to fill and satisfy guys from 6 all the way to the 6th round. I think this would be a great time to be a Coyote scout, and because you have value. Like, your opinion matters, because you could make a difference in this franchise for years and years to come at those picks, especially those 4 in the 3rd round. Yeah. Like, those picks, to me, a 3rd round pick is still a kid that can play in the National Hockey League. And you have 4 in that round could really put this franchise into the, okay, we're getting past the rebuild now. I think this draft is a huge stepping stone in getting past this rebuild point where we can start going, okay, now they're developing.
Yeah, but it does, for me, it comes back around to what we were talking about in the start about I don't know, I'm still kind of stuck on the defenseman thing. And there was a comment earlier that someone said apparently like the 3rd best ranked guy in next year's draft actually is a defenseman. So the thing is, we sit here and we're like very focused on the 2023 draft because it's literally next week. But Bill Armstrong, and he's actually said this on our show, like when they're mapping out everything, they're not just looking at this year and next year, like they're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now. So how much of the draft strategy then for this year is looking ahead to next year and thinking, oh, like maybe, that's where we'll really hit on the defenseman. I just think that part of it's so interesting as well, because while we're kind of not short-sighted, but we kind of are in the sense that where that's not our focus, nor is it really our job at this moment. It is for Bill Armstrong and his staff.
Yeah, and Darryl said that in the story too. They're scouting 16-year-old kids. The problem is they're 16-year-old kids. Yeah. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen in another year of development. You think you have a sense of the top guys, and that changes so often in that age range, 16 to 18, 15 to 18. So who the hell knows how the complexion of the draft is going to change over the course of next season.
I don't think anything will shock me at this. Like, if they take 2 forwards, great. If they take a forward and a defenseman, yep. Like, I just don't know. It's just
I've heard people say that Reinbacher may not last past the top 5. But there's this buzz out there, and I don't know if it's real or not. There are other people who think it's a reach. There have been comparisons with Mo Seider, but I have people saying he's not Mo Seider. He's not anything close to what Mo Seider was. I don't want to say anything close, but he's not at that level yet. There are parts of his game that need to come along. So do you really take him in the top 5 or 6, or do you wait a little longer? But then, there's that split between 6 and 12 for the Coyotes where it may be a reach to take Reinbacher at 6. He's probably not going to be there at 12. So maybe you have to look at one of the other top 2 guys that's available then.
Yeah, and I keep going back to Matvei Michkov.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second.
And I really believe that's the differentiator of this entire draft is what happens with Matvei Michkov. And we saw it yesterday with the tweet that said from Elliot Friedman that the Coyotes are picking him at 6 if he's there. Well, okay, like the amount of misinformation going out right now from organizations and scouts and playing the game of chess right now, because that might force somebody to go, gosh, if they're going to take him at 6, we were thinking we might get him at 7 or 8. Either
You
we got to
trade
move
up?
up.
Some mind games at play
Mind
here.
games. And
Yeah.
the Coyotes may have absolutely zero interest in Matvei Michkov, but they might force somebody to move up to take Matvei Michkov so that the guy that they are looking at that might be at 5 now drops to 6.
Yes.
Like there's so much gamesmanship.
Yep.
And what you read right now on Twitter from a team, an organization, or an inside source or a scout coming this late, take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
Because they said they're
Several
taking him
grains
at
of salt.
6. You're going, gosh, is that a play so they can bump Will Smith bump to 6 now because they're forcing somebody to jump up and now you don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to. You're absolutely right. And then all the stuff that's being said about Michkov too, character issues. I don't know how real that is. He's a 17-year-old kid. He's cocky. We know that. He has a lot of confidence, but I've never seen any reports that he's hard as a teammate, that he creates a problem in the dressing room. So do you really care that the kid's cocky, overconfident? Don't you want that? Isn't that who Logan Cooley is? The same thing has been said about Logan Cooley. So our team's trying to muddy the waters by creating this narrative that there may be character issues with Matvei Michkov so that he drops a little farther in the draft. I don't know, but I certainly think it's possible because these kind of games go on all the time.
When we talked about him earlier, Craig, we were talking about, is he going to be able to come over? Is there going to be issues with the war going on in Russia?
Yeah.
That was a legitimate concern. We are hearing from people, don't worry about that. 3
Russians
years.
always make it over, right?
Yeah, they're going to make it over. He's going to be here. Don't worry about that. And for the Coyotes timeline, Matvei Michkov, I think, works. 3 years from now, I think that's fine. I think that you're now got a guy playing against men the next 3 years. He's going to step right in, be ready to go when this team is rolling in their new arena or on the verge of their new arena. So I think all of that works. I'm not too worried about that. When you talk about his personality and his character issues, I don't know. I've never interviewed the kid, but believe me, these teams have done their homework. They know everything about Matvei Michkov that there is to know, whether they've talked to him personally or people that have played with him or coached him, or they know.
And they do. They do. The Coyotes have a lot of information on Matvei Michkov. Yeah. They do. They've done their homework.
And if he's a 17-year-old, then he's a pain in the ass. He may be. He may be. But does that mean he's going to be an 18-year-old pain in the ass in North America? It doesn't. Yeah. Like, it may carry over, but you've seen people get labeled as a bad attitude or bad character, and it may not necessarily be true. Like, I've heard that of players that I've met personally, and I'll give you an example. Taylor Hall, bad guy. He was a bad guy.
Not at all.
But Taylor Hall's not a bad guy. He's actually a really nice guy. Now, is he always easy to play with? That's debatable, but he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Phil Kessel, great guy. He's a great guy. And people, he's different. Yeah, great guy. So I don't temper it until you actually know and get him in part of your organization. Plus, when you've got him in North America with a North American NHL coach, with NHL players, that guys have been here.
And veteran leadership in a locker room.
That can change.
And you're out of your element too,
Yes.
so you need to adapt. You need to fit in. So all of that, I completely agree with that. And then I keep going back to the fact that everybody I talk to says this guy is a top 3 talent in this draft. How the hell do you pass on him? If it's like you're saying, Leah, if you're at 4 and he's still there in the mock draft, how do you pass on Matvei Michkov?
Yeah.
If you're at 5 or 6 and you're still going to pass on him, like something that Chris Peters said on our show, he said it to me again today when I talked to him. It's a 5-deep draft, right? The Coyotes are sitting at 6. The drop-off, you saw what Corey Proman said too, right? You sent us that text, Leah. The drop-off from there
can I actually just read it? Because it's really interesting.
Do.
So Corey Proman, and this was today, and also like the thesis of his article was like, this is why you shouldn't pass on him. So that's obviously his opinion, but he said, in my opinion, there's a significant drop in ability from Michkov to Karlsson. The drop in talent, this is crazy, is equivalent of that from Karlsson to the 18th ranked player on my draft board. I have Will Smith closely behind Karlsson, but in terms of Michkov to the next best Karlsson Smith player, that drop is cataclysmic. And then he went on to say, in my opinion, if you take someone other than Michkov, you are picking a dramatically worse player.
That's amazing, right? So how do you make that move? Now, there are a lot of factors to consider here. Like, do you think he's not going to want to play for you? And granted, they own his rights forever, so you could play hardball, but do you want to get into that situation where eventually you're going to have to trade him? You have to figure that part of it out too. But when you have a chance to get a generational player, especially if you're sitting at like 6 and he's still there, How the hell do you pass on that? You got to get approval from ownership too, right? They have to sign off on it, but
Yeah, I was sitting here a week ago saying, even at 6, I would think the Coyotes may pass, and look at some of the other names that we've talked about over the last week. I'm pretty sure if he's there at 6, he's a Coyote.
I think they're crazy to pass on him.
I mean, Craig Button came on our show and was like, I don't think there's an issue at all. I think he's gone in the top 4.
And if not for COVID and some of the issues with his schedule over COVID, he may be battling Bedard for first overall.
Right, because people haven't been able to live scout him all year.
Yes, so that may have made a difference. I've heard that he's closer to Bedard than people realize, but he's definitely, without a doubt, top 3. So if he's there at 6, you take him. And you figure it out.
And then, like, you know, the comment about Karlsson, like, let's just say Columbus is like knows that and they take Michkov at 3. Like, this is all hypothetical. So then Karlsson drops to 4, and then, like, how does that push everything? And maybe Montreal's like, you know what, we want a defenseman, we're taking Reinbacher. Well, all of a sudden there's Will Smith for the Coyotes
too.
at 6.
Like, when you look at Montreal and their needs, that who knows?
So, and I still like Ryan Leonard high, and I know people might not love Ryan Leonard. I like Ryan Leonard.
You're big on the Ryan Leonard.
I like Ryan Leonard for this team.
You're not the only one.
But I like Ryan Leonard for this team and a Bill Armstrong style.
The photo
team.
I used for my story today.
Yeah.
Ryan Leonard too. Yeah.
I would not be sad with a Ryan Leonard pick at 6.
Okay.
I would not be. I wouldn't be sad with a Ryan Leonard pick at 6.
Yeah.
But Will Smith might be there.
Like, that would be the most, the biggest
if Will Smith's
irony
there,
ever.
I'm taking him because you want a center, you want a premium position. Here's
Smith's
the other thing: like, if your scouting staff believes that David Reinbacher is a top pair defenseman, do you really go and take a guy like Ryan Leonard over him? Like, what do you want more? Do you want a top 6 wing or do you want a top
pair defenseman?
Yeah,
of course. You need the defenseman, especially a franchise
even a
that
top
needs
4 defenseman.
Depth.
Because it's defense.
Yeah, and you need
so
that
important.
depth, and especially when you don't have that depth.
Yeah,
at defense. So you're right, and it's going to be the fun part about this is we get to talk about it like we know, and we don't.
Well, I was about to say all of this to say we have no freaking idea.
No, but
that's the truth.
The funny part about this
still
right
fun
now,
to talk about.
The Coyotes have no idea who they're going to pick at 6. In that, they don't know what people are going to pick from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And I think that's going to shape what they do at 6 unless they absolutely go like they did with Cooley.
Yeah.
You know, Shane Wright drops. But I know they have their list. I'm not saying they're not prepared. They have their lists. But when you're not picking 1st or 2nd, 6th, a lot of things are going to change. And at 12, my goodness, there might be somebody at 12 available that they thought was going to be gone by 8. Right. And all of a sudden is sitting in their lap at 12. So they thought it was player B at 12. Gosh, it's player A.2 at 12.
Or they'd like jump up to 10. Like Tim Bernhardt also last week was talking about there might be a scenario where they think, oh shit. Or there might be a scenario where they're fine to, you know, slide back to
15.
14 or something because they, you know, it's just like,
right.
Oh,
There's
to be a fly like on the draft floor during this, to be in the bugs of like the
no doubt,
phone
right?
calls.
And it's so fascinating to me. Like, you remember when it was in the bubble and they were just all enclosed in war rooms. Like,
yes,
they do that in the NFL. In hockey, you're at a table right next to another table where they're having this. It's just crazy the things that I can imagine, like holding up cards to hide conversations.
That famous like gif of Kyle Dubas like with 2 phones on his ear, but also Bill Armstrong when he was on our show telling us that a lot of the deals happen over text.
Right? Because you don't want to be talking. You want people reading lips. It's crazy.
I do think this draft is going to be really interesting to see all of the things that are going to lead up to it. Are there going to be trades? And first time Gary Bettman steps up to the microphone and goes, "We have a trade." That's
the best ever.
Like, I remember DP and I last year were at Four Peaks, and we got to go like, "There's a trade," and everybody gets excited. It was the Coyotes, and
when Craig was calling into the show, and then I was like, "Craig, we gotta go. The Coyotes just traded up."
It was so exciting, and I anticipate this year. Because the Coyotes have 2 picks in the first round again, I anticipate this being an exciting year to watch the draft.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this changes the franchise.
Anything else on
it needs to.
Today's draft talk before we move on? I mean, we're not moving on from draft talk, but we're moving on from bigger picture.
Yeah, I think we've already talked about the deep pool.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week as well.
It's just the goalies I wonder about. I'm fascinated by the idea that there are 6 goaltenders in the top 100 in Chris Peters' rankings, and we don't know shit about goalies at this age. We just don't know shit about them.
No, and you've seen it go as well as Marc-Andre Fleury and you win a cup, or you can go Patrick DeRoche or Mark Byzantine, and you don't.
Or Rick DiPietro.
And this franchise, I still like Rick DiPietro. I think he could play for his injuries and his arrogance. But I look at the two players the Coyotes picked at number one. Not number one. In the first round as goalies, Mark Byzantine and Patrick DeRoche, who don't play for your franchise, kill you. Like, you cannot be wrong in the first round. I'm not a believer in a first-round pick.
Completely agree, unless it's a can't-miss guy. But like Andre Vasilevsky, right?
Yeah, and you do Carey Price, Marc-Andre Fleury. Like, they've been there.
Yeah.
I still believe the best goalie they've drafted in the last decade is Aiden Hill.
Now he is. Now it's Aiden Hill, which is crazy.
Who was a backup?
He's going to cash in.
He was a backup this year, and don't people go, "Oh, they should have kept on him"? He's a backup.
I know, and he's still a backup.
He's a third-round
He's
pick.
not going to get a ton of money. They got a second-round pick for him, and it's funny. I was talking to goalie people who are like, "Watch the games." Aiden Hill isn't being forced to move from side to side. That team defends so well.
And he did so
That's
well.
exactly it.
But the rebounds, tips, and the second opportunities weren't there. He played great.
Yeah.
He's a Stanley Cup champion.
Yep.
He is going to be well sought after. And have you heard the rumors of Winnipeg, a team that they might pay him? Because you got to pay guys to go to Winnipeg.
He's probably going to get paid. And then there might be buyer's remorse.
Yes.
Because
Hellebuck
I'm still not convinced that he's a starting goalie
Can you
in the
imagine
NHL.
you go from Vegas, Golden Knights to Winnipeg? Whew, boy, howdy.
I
still think he
money.
can end up in Vegas.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's talk for a different day.
But when you look at the goalies right now,
who are
Ivan
they, though?
Prosvetov has not developed as they would have hoped. And I don't want to say, well, it's over, because goalies are crazy. It can happen at 27 or 28 years old. Look at Darcy Kemper when he finally came into his own. It can happen really late for goaltenders. But right now, when you look at Prosvetov and then you look at Anson Thornton and Rasmus Korhonen, do you have a goalie where you're like, yeah, that guy's going to be a starting goalie in the NHL? You don't even know if these guys are going to be backups at this point. And their philosophy is they'd like to add one guy every year to add to the system. Well, they need some guys, because if you look at Tucson right now, aside from Prosvetov, you don't have a backup.
No.
You don't have a backup that you think is actually a prospect. In the ECHL, you don't have a prospect that you think is possibly going to make it to the NHL. They need to add to that pool without a doubt.
But do you think that all starts, Craig, with what they do at the number 2 slot right now, Prosvetov and Ingram? Like, they're going to have to make a decision on that relatively soon.
To me, I don't think it's that hard a decision. I know there's all this talk, oh my God, Prosvetov could get claimed. I don't think he's getting claimed.
So sign them both, send Prosvetov down.
Yeah.
I don't think
run with the same goaltending tandem you did last year.
Yep. I that's fair.
Because if you sign Prosvetov, you got to put him on your NHL roster if you claim him off waivers. I'm saying,
and who's
he's going to be on the NHL roster. You can't say,
doing that?
Okay, he's going to play in the NHL. You can't do that.
Yeah, and if you go through all of the teams, who's doesn't have 2 that you'd look at? Okay, we're gonna, or even a third in their minor league that we go, wow, he's at least competitive with Prosvetov.
No, here's what's gonna happen. Someone's gonna claim Prosvetov, and he's gonna go and win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
That's why he'll blossom into exactly what they thought he was going to be.
I like what Steven said. Sign Joey Decord.
Love it.
Game 7 Wednesday night.
Little Arizona State tie-in too. We love. Well, whatever happens next week, we'll send the scouting staff a pack of Four Peaks beer to put their feet up after this one. They're going to be really busy. I'm sure they're really busy this week. They'll be very busy next week. And then after that, their work for now is done, and they can kick back and relax and enjoy some Four Peaks in the warm Arizona summer, which is slowly creeping on. We've had a very nice summer so far. But Four Peaks, you can buy it wherever you buy your beer. We love Four Peaks. And Four Peaks for Teachers is back. Teacher Tuesdays is back. So today, if you're a teacher, head down to the 8th Street Pub every Tuesday through July. If you bring a valid teacher ID, you'll receive $4 pints of Kitlifter, Wow, Hazy, and Hop Night. You should tell Tara about that. She's a professor, right? So
She is?
Gotta take advantage.
Still in Ireland, though.
I know.
Summering in Europe. Rough life.
You can check out at Four Peaks Brew or at Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest at Arizona's hometown brewery. You must be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and please drink responsibly. We can't travel with OGs, but maybe take one before the 5 a.m. flight. I don't know, to Nashville on Monday. But OGs, there's a new flavor coming tomorrow. Pink lemonade. It's on its way. Yeah, that's right. Max is stoked. Pink lemonade gummies drop tomorrow. Fresh tangy lemon, a hint of red berry, and plenty of sugar. here to help flavor the summer. I mean, check out the OG's flavors are just amazing. The creams, the fruits, watermelon, red apple, peach, blackberries and cream, orange creamsicle, peaches and cream. And they have something for everybody. Sleep edition, microdose, indica, sativa, happy balance, whatever it is you need. OG's has it. So don't miss it when it comes to flavor and effect. Get your gummies while you can. Check out OG's online at ogsbrands.com and on Instagram at ogsbrands. You can find their products at your local dispensary. You must be 21 or older to purchase. All right. Couple other notes before we head out. First, it's Craig's favorite topic, the preseason schedule. But I have to say, this is a fascinating preseason schedule, much like last season where they didn't play any home games during the preseason. The same applies. And not only that, they're playing 3 games in 3 cities on the same day. No, it's not the same roster, obviously. But this is a crazy preseason schedule. So Friday the 22nd, the Melbourne team plays. Then Saturday the 23rd, there's a game against the Blues in St. Louis. There's a game against the Blues also, but in Kansas. And then there's also a game in LA. No,
that's in
the
Melbourne
Melbourne
too.
game. I can't even keep
On
track.
the same day.
So all
On the same day. Split squads.
It's a tri squad.
I mean,
Try squad.
those rosters
Can you
against the
imagine?
Blues.
So you have to have a minimum of 60 players going to camp. Have to.
And those rosters against the Blues aren't guys who are going to be on the NHL team.
But like,
Who's going to work the games?
But the
Who's coaching the games?
Who's the who's carrying the equipment?
guy?
Like the logistics. I feel
Oh
for the staff.
God.
I really do. So that that weekend's crazy.
Who? What?
Then there's a game Sunday against the Stars in Cedar Park, Texas. And then it gets a little bit more fun. Obviously, they play at Vegas. And then there's a game in Palm Springs versus the Ducks on Sunday, October 1st.
I want to go to that.
I would love to. It's only a 4-hour drive. It's at 3 p.m. on a Sunday. You can easily make that a day trip.
Yes.
And then they have another one in Anaheim. And then back to Tucson, Saturday, October 7th at 3 p.m. So
Fire.
we went last year as a blast, but
So that's
on a
Saturday?
Thursday.
October 7th? Saturday or Sunday? I can't see that.
it
Which
says
way, the Ducks?
Saturday, October 7th.
And that's in Tucson
in
at 3 p.m.
Tucson. Sunday, October 1st is in Palm Springs, the week before.
So we're
Okay,
going to
so-
have, and the regular season's going to start that next week then.
I would think.
So,
Yeah.
That Wednesday
Yeah.
or Thursday.
So, I mean, the
Right?
Coyotes
Maybe even Tuesday.
the Coyotes not playing a game in Tempe or whatever, like that's not a surprise. We dealt with this last year. I just think it's like this is chaos to the max. And for the people who have to figure out the logistics, I will also be sending you a bag of Four Peaks or a bag of OGs because
Right.
boy howdy. But should be interesting how they divide it. Obviously, we've discussed the better roster is probably going to be the one in Australia, given they're they're marketing the game there. That'll be the Keller,
It will
Krause.
absolutely be the better roster.
So
yeah,
for those of you taking
Going to
this
Wichita,
in and St. Louis and Kansas,
Oh, boy.
should
you
be.
might get a version of the Roadrunners in one of those cities, and then
I don't know who it is.
I don't know. Maybe like camp invitees for
Maybe
another one of
you
those
and
days.
I. Maybe there's a chance. Like
No chance
for
for me,
real.
buddy.
Like 60 players going to camp is a lot, and you got to hold them at least through that Saturday now.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Oh, I
Yeah.
feel for the staff.
Yep.
I also feel for the staff. Crazy schedule. All right. Well, kind of going back to draft talk, we've been doing our daily prospect spotlight. We skipped yesterday, trying to run through the list of guys that the Coyotes could take at either 6 or 12. And today we're going to talk about Gabe Perreault, 5'11", right wing, 165. We had his head coach Dan Muse on our show to talk about him about the NTDP. He just set this all-time single-season point record in NTDP history, which is crazy. And there's also a Arizona-ish tie-in.
Yeah, it is. So his dad was Coyote All-Star, and it's really hard saying that. All-Star Yannick Perreault. They used to call him No Panic Yannick. And the only reason he went to the All-Star game that year, and no offense, Yannick, because I'm sure he's listening, is because he led the league in faceoff percentage. And the Coyotes, again, sucked. And you got to decide, you got to send somebody. So you might as well send the guy that's leading the league in faceoffs. And you look at the All-Stars, they keep them in the weight room there. So you see Yandel and Burke and Doan and Kachuk and Perreault. And everybody goes, Who's Yannick Perreault? But his son, the kid can play. The kid can absolutely play. He's a high skilled guy that's going to provide offense. Now, Luckily, he played on the best line in the history of the NDP program, and that has helped elevate his points to where they are today. He's a guy. There's been questions you read about and hear about from the guys that have been on our show, but his skating, and that's what's going to push him down lower in the draft, even though he has this high point. He's a guy that I think will be there at 12. I don't know if they grab him at 12. I think he's a guy, he's a late teen, maybe in a 20.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I did see a comment earlier. Someone said they would like to see the Coyotes take Perreault at 12. When Craig Button was on our show last week, he said that he still needs to develop physically, but that he is a well-rounded player. But when you think of Perreault, you think of, high offense. But again, on that top line, so is again a sub-6 foot guy. We talk about what Bill Armstrong's out there looking for, and he's a winger. So
and he's clearly the third of that top line of Will Smith and Ryan Leonard. He's the 3.
Yes.
Even though he had more points, he's still the number 3 when you're looking at those guys.
He's not number 6 overall in my opinion. But 12, I don't know.
He might be there at 12.
Never say.
Let's see.
The theme of this episode is never say never.
And it's a small draft too. You talk about sub 6 foot guys. It's a small draft.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to continue or
if Logan Cooley is your guy.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about his size and his stature. Do you need Gabe Perreault too, or do you want Ryan Leonard?
And even Ryan Leonard's sub 6 foot. So
yeah, he plays a little grittier.
Yeah, he does.
You're right.
He does.
You're right. So we'll see. The fun part is we don't know. We don't know.
132 points though in 63 games. Is
Not
that
bad.
good?
That's good.
Don't know if
Not
that
bad.
quite translates.
You beat Austin Matthews. Yeah, that's
to
good.
the NHL. Oh man. All right. Well, before we move on to our day 7 of 10 Days of Tootsies, we have a super chat from Tim, and he said, "Craig, thoughts on Sarah Valley saying Arizona are buyers?"
Buyers?
That's what Tim said.
I mean, they're buyers, but depends on how you define that. First of all, as I said earlier, it's not a good free agent class. They're not going to be looking to make a big splash in free agency, getting whoever the top names are. They're going to look for value, both in age and in contracts. Like Petey said, some of the guys, like you could look for a Nick Bjugstad that you could flip again and get draft assets, but you could also be looking for the type of player that could grow with this team. And again, it's going to be value. They're not going to make.
Are they going for Alex DeBrincat? He's a name that comes up all the trademark.
No, Alex DeBrincat's not going to be a Coyote. It's not the right time for the Coyotes to do that, even if they wanted Alex DeBrincat. So no, it's not going to be that kind of splash. Value. Think value. Guys that can grow but allow their best players still to play in primary roles. That's what they're going to try.
So
and
they're not running it Carter Hart or Connor Hellebuck to tend the goal.
No, but you remember Clayton Keller's agent was on our show. They want some clarity and they want some progress as well. I think at the time that we are in the rebuild, it makes sense anyway to do what they're doing, but I don't discount the possibility that a little bit of pressure from those key core players is driving some of this as well. They want to see movement forward or they want out. They just don't want to keep spinning their wheels in a rebuild indefinitely.
Yep. All right. Well, there's that for now. We'll hopefully get more clarity. I'm sure we'll get more clarity next week and see what happens, because we haven't even mentioned the possibilities that the Coyotes can trade current roster players also as part of the draft.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
I was talking about that with Jeff Merrick today. And again, Nick Schmaltz's name keeps coming up, but I still think that they like to keep them together, Keller and Schmaltz. I wonder about Karel Vejmelka. I really do.
Yeah. Very interesting.
The goalie market.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
Yeah.
Veggie.
Wow.
Anyway.
All right. Well, before we get to 10 Days of Tootsies, we'll save that for the very last thing. Like we mentioned, we are headed to Nashville next week, and we can't be more excited. I'm thrilled. And there's a group of people who are watching the show right now coming with us, and we're so excited. And a lot of those people are, if not most of them, are our diehards. We have a thread going, kind of planning some stuff in Nashville. But those diehards got 20% off their tickets to Nashville. So that's just one of the many perks of being a PHNX diehard. You also get 20% off merchandise in our locker, including the shirts you two are wearing today. You get a hat or shirt every year at sign up. You get a Dobson Ranch card when you become a member. You get a Mountain Mike's $50 pizza voucher when you become a diehard.
Mountain Mike's.
Oh yeah,
Buddy, today.
coming today.
So get your $50 mountain mics. It's worth the price of a diehard membership between that and your free hat and t-shirt every year.
Yep.
It's worth the price of admission.
Yep. And of course, Craig has weekly diehard only content
Well,
on the
that's
website.
worth the price
I
right
mean,
there.
it all is. So become a diehard today. Check out phnxlocker.com to grab your membership to receive all of the perks that we just mentioned, as well as our access to our Discord chat, which I feel like I need to mention every day because it's just that great. But before we head to Nashville,
can I say one thing about the Discord though? Because I was watching it. Let's keep in mind on the Discord that we're all in this together. Like we don't. Our Discord doesn't argue, but they sometimes have very differing opinions. Let's make sure it's okay to have different opinions, especially we're talking about the arena in the East or the West Valley. It started to get a little heated yesterday.
Yeah,
we just are glad the team is considering staying. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that here. That just we're all on the same side.
Yep. Agree. I think we can all agree though that we love Circle K. That's
do.
one thing that nobody disagrees on.
We do.
Because Circle K's are everywhere. They have Polar Pops. What more do I need to say? I looked at the forecast. I saw 110 coming. It's coming soon. So.
And those cups don't get that moisture on the outside either.
Yeah.
They don't get that.
And they fit in your cup holder for how giant they are, which is amazing.
Massive.
So head into Circle K, stock up on all your goods.
Jacob just took out his thigh. Well, I couldn't be his thigh.
Too much. This is the problem with this studio is like I can see everything happening and I've already lost it twice today. But check out Circle K. Make sure you're not missing out on all of this great stuff. You can text PHNX to 31310 to join their SMS subscriber club and get a buy one get one free offer on 32-ounce Polar Pops. Head to circlek.com/store-locator to find Circle K's near you. All right, Petey.
We've been going through our 10 days of Tootsies leading up to the 10 days prior to us getting to the draft when we will all be at Tootsies on Monday at some point of that day. There's no doubt in my mind we'll be at Tootsies at some point. By the way, live music starts at 10 a.m. We're going outside on the street on the sidewalk of Broadway today.
Okay.
And this, when you think of Nashville, you don't think of Elvis. Elvis you think of in Memphis, Tennessee, but right outside of Tootsies, in front of Legends Gift Shop, which is right next door to Tootsie's, you have this. You have the statue of Elvis Presley on the street next door to Tootsie's. So I encourage everybody that's making the trip to stop and get your picture with Elvis, because this is the 20 feet from the pilgrimage to Tootsie's. So this is day 7. Day 7 of your 10 days at Tootsie's, and we'll see you there on Monday.
Wow. Can't wait. Sincerely can't wait.
What are we wearing in Nashville, by the way?
It's gonna be sticky.
It is really gonna be sticky.
Don't wear gray. That's all I gotta say.
I've always worn a suit to the draft. I'm not sure that's happening in Nashville.
We're gonna have to talk.
You know
about
how
this
like in Arizona when they overcompensate the heat by like making stores like sub-zero.
Yeah,
like it could be like that. It could be freezing.
Could be like that in Bridgetown, but we got to walk to Bridgetown.
Well, that's why you do layers. You know,
layers with a suit.
Craig, did you not schedule our car service to pick us up and drop us off door to door?
Thought, actually.
He probably will. If there's a limo there, and it'd be like a 1-person limo.
Craig in our like ALLCITY NHL chat was like, "Are there any patisseries nearby?" Oi. All right. Anything else before we?
No. Let's go. We'll save it for Nashville. I have ideas, but
oh boy. Anything else before we wrap up today?
Nope.
Well, we have a couple of really exciting shows the rest of the week. We have Greg Wyshynski joining us tomorrow live at 11 a.m. Lots to talk about with him,
including chocolate.
So get your chocolate ideas ready. We'll talk kind of big picture stuff with him, his a national perspective on the Coyotes, as well as some other topics. So really looking forward to that. And then on Thursday, the Bob father, Bob McKenzie, is joining us live at 11 a.m. to talk about his ranking that comes out that same day.
Might as well go on PHNX Live when you come out with the TSN rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I mean, Corey Pronman came on our show the day his rankings came out too. So it's tradition, but we're really excited. He's always the last one to release his rankings, really close to the draft. And obviously, Bob McKenzie's a legend. So really,
and dialed in, like
extremely,
insanely dialed in.
Extremely. So it'll be really great talking to him. So all of that's coming this week. We're live every day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Obviously, our schedule will change a little bit in Nashville. We'll let you all know what that schedule is. But for the most part, you can expect that consistency, and just be sure to subscribe to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss when we do go live. And yeah, just make sure you're a subscriber there. You can also listen to our show on audio wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review wherever you do. It really means a lot to us. But until then, you can follow all of us on Twitter at @SPetersHockey, at Leah Merrill, at Craig S. Morgan, at Sean_DePaz. You can follow the show at PHNX_Coyotes. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you all tomorrow.